This conference will now be recorded.
Hello. Thank you, Sally, and for anyone who's watching the recording for your interest in the award. I've just got 3 or 4 slides that are basically just an introduction to the award and some kind of guidance and tips for people considering entering this year and just kind of how it all works. So the first one here is just on the kind of the aim of it and the judging criteria. So the aim of the award is to recognise and celebrate the contribution of independent consultants. And by independent consultants, we use for the award the same definition as we use for membership criteria for to be able to join the ICG. To enter, you have to either be an ICG member or an MRS member or both. And to fulfill the criteria of ICG membership, so to be in a micro business with 3 or fewer employees. The criteria there are 3 criteria. So the entries are judged against one or more. So you could have elements for all 3, or you could be very much focused on one of these. But the 3 criteria are excellence when using established methodologies and techniques. Second one is innovation, originality, and relevance when using novel methodologies and techniques. And the third is the strength of contribution made to the success of a client's business. And quite often people do have at least kind of 2 elements of 2 of those criteria, but it's not essential as long as it's strong on at least one of those. And the submissions themselves are in 3 parts. There's the 1,500-word synopsis. There's a 200-word summary, and you can include up to 3 charts or illustrations, which could be PowerPoint charts. They could be or some kind of evidence of kind of the output of the research, so creative work that's come out of it, something like that. But 3 individual kind of charts, and that's all that you need to submit, which is done through the MRS platform. The deadline for submissions opens in next week, I think, 2nd of May, and then it's open for 2 months. So basically, you have the whole of May and June to develop and make your submission. The deadline is the 4th of July, and the judging process is quite straightforward. There are basically 4 to 6 judges, so an equal number of ICG and MRS. Or the ICG put forward nominate judges, and the MRS do the same. So there's an equal balance between ICG and MRS members who are all experienced researchers themselves. And essentially, we're all given the papers to read through, again, through the platform. The judges read through all the papers individually and score them and make comments and obviously keep their notes. And then at the end of the judging period, which is basically most of the summer, then the judges kind of get together in September, towards the end of September, to discuss the rationale for their scores and to agree the finalists and the winner in that meeting. So every paper is considered, every paper is discussed, and then, you know, through a process of discussion and agreement, we kind of reach the agreed finalist and winner at that meeting. So the last slide here is just in terms of kind of tips and just some thoughts, having now been responsible for the award for 2 years and kind of had two years worth of experience of kind of judging. The criteria are designed to be as broad, as open as possible, so it's not so that any kind of ICG member has potential to kind of join and have a paper. But there are certain things just to, I think, would be useful to bear in mind. One of which is to be conscious of those 3 criteria, which one or which 2 or 3 of those you want to be judged against, and to tailor your story to that criteria, or those, you know, that criterion or those criteria. So I think most people will find that at 1,500 words, you have to be quite selective about what elements of the project or the methodology you're going to focus on. If you're and so that's just to bear that in mind and to make sure that it's quite clear what your where you see the strength and which of those criteria you're thinking about. The second point there is, if you can the judges, even from the MRS side, are quite often independent researchers themselves too. So and they're conscious of the fact this is an independent researchers award. So if you can demonstrate in your process why working with independent researchers or a collaborative team of independent researchers is better for clients, and that's something to celebrate. So if there's something about your paper that says this is better because it was independent or because I brought together a team of independents to work on it, then that is a positive thing. No, it's not a formal criterion. If your entry is case study based, then it's definitely best to focus either on a single project or a connected series of projects for a specific brand or client. And so that there's a kind of a story that follows through. If you've got two excellent unrelated projects, then you can enter twice. But rather than, I think if you have cover off, you've done multiple excellent research and you give a kind of top line of lots of different projects, then it becomes much more difficult for the judges to kind of be able to say that's kind of exceptional. And so when people do that, and so they're entering kind of a summary of their best work of the year, then it's kind of unlikely to win unless there's a single focus thing. So if it's based around a new methodology and you show, then maybe that would be a good way of showcasing the new methodology by how you've applied it in different ways. But if it's simply a case of I've done lots of great work and here's a summary of it all, then that's not the best way. It's better to focus on a single project or some way related series of projects. One thing on video, which was a bit of a confusion last year because someone asked me whether you could include video, and I was told you could not, because you can have, like I say, there's the synopsis, the summary, and then there is 3 charts or images that you can attach. So you can't attach a video. What some people did, because it's not very clear, I think, in the instructions when you enter, is they included links to external videos or content that were outputs from the research. Then you can do that, and people have done that, and I will try and seek clarity on whether that's considered acceptable. But I think anything that's external, there's no obligation for the judges to look at it, and I think that's out of respect for the judges, that if you send someone a link to an hour-long video, then that's quite an onerous extra task for someone who may have 15 entries to read. So there's no obligation. So to make sure that the entry that you submit, so the synopsis, the summary, and the charts stand alone as an entry, rather than relying on links and hoping the judges will follow the links to external content. And the final tip there is just on being aware of the MRS Code of Conduct and GDPR. It is useful to have it's supposed like in any presentation, it might be useful to use quotes from participants to bring something to life. But we have had cases in the past where people have included quotes that appear that it's unclear whether they're anonymous or not, or whether it's unclear whether they have permission has been gained to use those. And so we can't go back after the judging meeting to check if necessary code of conduct GDPR things have been checked. So just to make sure if you are using quotes that they are completely anonymized, or if you're using someone's name, but the name's changed, so it is anonymous, but it's not obviously anonymous, then to make sure that you say that within your thing, so that basically there's no doubt that someone could have be breaching code of conduct or breaching GDPR rules, because ultimately we can't, give an award to something where there's any kind of doubt around that. And I think that's all of my tips. I think ultimately, we welcome a variety of papers, and we have had quite different. We've had classic kind of research projects, qual and quant type based projects or series of projects of one. We've had a training program one. We've had desk research based projects win. So there's quite a variety of winners that we've had in the 6 or 7 years that we've been running. So any kind of things are welcome. And if anyone needs to, I'm going to stop sharing now. If yeah, if anyone wants any advice or just to bounce something off me, then I'm available for a chat. But
Matt,
Sally,
that's
have you?
really useful. Yeah, I do have one question.
Yeah,
If there's a case study that somebody has and it's with a client, how is that for you? Because obviously this is an award for the independent, but clearly you'd be trying to highlight the benefit of your technique, your approach, for the client. So how do you think about that going into an award together with a client?
with the client. I think we do have. Um, I mean, certainly when it comes to the awards dinner at the end, people do bring their client along. I'm just trying to think if people do enter. People generally in this award enter as an independent researcher.
Yeah,
I um, and obviously they'll have the support of their clients, and it certainly is helpful to have um, quotes from the client just to particularly if explaining if part of the reason why it's a good case study is the depth in terms of how far into the client's work and how impactful it's been at the client, then having quotes from the client within that to demonstrate that is really useful. Um, but I'm not sure that we necessarily have joint entries as such where the client's named as part of the entry.
I mean, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, we entered an award and we it was a case study with a
Yeah.
client and we couldn't decide which was it was appropriate for multiple categories within the MRS
Mhm.
awards. And I think I spoke to the MRS and said, what could they help me understand the difference between, whether this made more sense in the independence, or I think it was against a particular methodology, that award. And their advice was it could work for either. I think we went for the methodology in the end,
Yeah.
but there didn't seem to be anything they were saying that suggested, that a joint client case study
Yeah.
couldn't work for this. But I guess
Yeah.
your point, if you look at your criteria, you're trying to celebrate the advantages almost of, being
Yeah.
an independent and what that brought, for the overall project. Would that be fair?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, certainly that's. I mean, I think it's um, certainly a bonus if the being an independent or being able to select a team of independents with specialist skills, and you can demonstrate that's better than it would have been with a large agency, or at least the client believes that that was the case. Then that's good. I was thinking actually when because last year we had some of the entries were just under the name of the researcher or the researcher's business name. Some of them did include the client um, or some kind of partner in the named entry. But I think it was always the case that it was the researcher, the independent researcher that wrote the paper and presented it. But I think it's perfectly okay to name the client as a as within your entry, so it would come from company X and client Y
Right.
as a name thing. So the client can be included in the kind of in the name of the entry. But I think that you would have to be the lead, the person actually submitting the entry.
Got it.
Yeah.
Really helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? We had more people last year.
Just thinking about you mentioned it could be a methodology, it could be you've had training in the past. So I guess if it's the case of training, then you're looking for, something interesting or new about this training, and again, why it's beneficial from an independent point of view.
Yes. Yeah. Or a I mean I wasn't involved in the process when the training program won, but I think it was someone who was kind of had specialised, who'd moved had a career in research and was specialised in kind of training researchers. So that was their kind of their primary business. It wasn't, and so they had a whole kind of a program of training that they presented, but I'm not quite sure what the detail of the paper was in that case.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, but anything, I suppose, in a way, because I think sometimes something that's a bit different is easier to stand out amongst. Depends how many papers, because some years, I think last year we had about 15 entrants, I think, and other years it's been, but some years it's been smaller than that. I think it could be sort of maybe 7 or 8, and sometimes it might be 15, 16. So so anything that kind of makes it stand out as a little bit, different from the other papers is obviously helpful. So it's just so it's yeah. So any kind of angle, like I say, and it could be. My only thing would be is as long as there's a kind of coherent thing, and it's not a case of, oh, we did 3 great projects last year, let's include them all in. That would be fine if there were 3 great projects that all had the one led to the other for the same client, or there were 3 great projects that included this innovative methodology that you used in one, and then you've applied in different ways, and you're demonstrating the flexibility of the method. As long as there's some connection and a kind of story that you can build that links the 3, then that would be fine. But just doing I had a great year as an independent, and so here's lots of things I did. It's not that type of an award.
Yeah, got it.
That makes sense.
Something tangible and specific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lucy, shall we?
Hello. Yeah, that's probably it, Matt. Thank you.
I think so. So shall we?
Good luck, Sally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks a lot, both of you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Lucy. Bye.